Welcome to the Polar STEAM Educator Program Update and Overview. I'm Melissa Barker, the Polar STEAM Program Director, here to talk about the Educator Program. Funded by the U.S. National Science Foundation and facilitated by Oregon State University, Polar STEAM connects polar researchers with educators and artists to co-create educational and creative works that bring polar science to life for broader audiences. By fostering collaboration, Polar STEAM enriches how the public experiences and understands the polar regions through teaching, storytelling, and artistic expression. Our year-long collaborations allow educators the opportunity to work directly with scientists doing research in the polar regions. Through Polar STEAM, educators build community, engage in professional development, and share their expertise in content creation and science communication. The goal of today's session is to provide a brief overview of our current cohort, 2026, in about 5 minutes, and then you can continue to watch our general information session that aired in 2025 that will provide all the relevant information and details about the program. All the dates I share in the first part of the video pertain to our current application for the 2027 field season. Keep in mind that the second part of the video, some of the dates may have changed, so always visit our Apply Now page on our website for the most current information. This slide gives you an idea of how many educators, researchers, and artists can participate each year. You'll notice the question marks for the Antarctic and the artists. That matching process is still underway at this time. This past season, we had 3 artists and 1 educator in the Antarctic. These are our current virtual teams. In this group, we have researchers who are investigating paleoclimate through ice and sediment cores, sea ice and water mass interactions, neutrinos, and the behavior, ecology, physiology, and demography of marine mammals. Their collaborating educators are able to bring polar science content and data to their classroom, and several of the researchers will be meeting virtually with students to provide additional insight into the world of polar science. Plans are in the works for some of these educators to visit with their researchers, which may take them into a lab to assist with processing samples or into the field to participate in scientific work within the lower 48 that is similar to the researchers' work in the Arctic or Antarctic. We have 12 teams that are headed to the Arctic in 2026. 1 team heads out this month, and the rest are sprinkled throughout June, July, and August. These educators will spend 1 to 4 weeks living with and working as part of the research team. This map shows the sites where the field teams will be working this summer. Most educators will be land-based in Alaska. We have 1 land-based team in Greenland and a ship-based team traveling from Iceland to Newfoundland. You can read more about our fellows and their projects on our website. Ultimately, our educators will create STEAM-focused educational resources using the science of the research team. The Polar STEAM Resource Hub on our website hosts creative and engaging educational resources created by our fellows that have been taught in classrooms across the country. We are working on posting the resources created by our 3rd cohort, so be on the lookout for new additions coming in the next few months. Integrating art into educational resources provides additional entry points for learners to engage in polar science and activates STEAM principles of curiosity, creativity, and critical thinking. Educators have used comic illustration of the science, songs about the South Pole Telescope, and the paper construction of underground food cellars, polar poetry, and the sounds of melting ice to engage learners. So what's new for 2027? We've made updates to the application. Be sure to download the application questions from our website and allow time to create thoughtful and detailed responses. We are looking for creative ideas to expand the reach of polar science. And don't forget to submit your application by noon Pacific time on July 15th. We again hope to place 10 virtual and 10 field-based educators. As we do each year, educator and researcher recruitment run concurrently, so we do not know yet which research topics will be happening in 2027. If you're focused on bringing Antarctic science to your learners, a virtual collaboration is the best way to accomplish this goal. Some virtual collaborations may also include a university or lab visit or conference travel. We are unsure if we will have any educators in the Antarctic this season. Please continue watching to dive more deeply into the details of the program, including who is eligible to apply, our cohort model, specifics about virtual and field collaborations, and the application and selection timeline. Be sure to listen to the final considerations towards the end of the presentation for some helpful hints. There's also a Q&A at the end that answers several of the common questions we receive. After watching the rest of the information session and reading our FAQs, if you still have questions, please reach out to Polar STEAM. All right, welcome to the Polar STEAM Educator Information Session. Let's get started. My name is Melissa Barker, and I'm the Polar STEAM Outreach and Engagement Lead. My background is in experiential education, and I've been a high school science teacher for 22 years. I've also had the opportunity to participate in teacher-researcher programs, including spending 5 weeks in the Arctic through the Polar Trek program. Polar STEAM is a U.S. National Science Foundation funded program run by this interdisciplinary team at Oregon State University. It merges two longstanding initiatives, the Polar Educators Program and the Antarctic Artist and Writer Program, into one integrated effort. Our mission is to connect researchers with educators and artists to enhance public engagement with polar science by employing principles of STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. We're glad you're here with us today. In this webinar, we'll share information about Polar STEAM's educator program. This event will also be recorded and posted on this channel and on our website. If you're looking for information about our researchers program for NSF-funded researchers, or the Antarctic Artist and Writer program, we have webinars on both posted on our website and our YouTube channel. The informational part of this webinar should be about 15 to 20 minutes. As we go, please use the chat to ask questions. Jamie Ivory, our logistics coordinator, will be organizing these questions to answer at the end, along with the questions that folks have submitted ahead of time. Polar STEAM pairs educators with researchers to engage directly with polar research through virtual and field-based collaborations. Our cohort of researchers, educators, and artists and writers, who are all called fellows, engage in a shared learning experience to ultimately create STEAM-focused educational resources using the science of the research team. We recruit from three educator groups to collaborate both virtually and in person with polar researchers. These groups are community college and primarily undergraduate serving institution faculty, 6 through 12 educators, and informal educators. These might be educators who work in an aquarium or a science center, or something similar. We welcome all educators, not just science educators, that can creatively integrate polar science with their learners. Applicants need to be a practicing educator with a defined group of learners. The National Science Foundation also requires participants to be U.S. citizens or permanent residents and at least 21 years of age. Selected virtual or field educators will become part of a cohort that starts in February and spans roughly a year. Within each cohort, individual educators and researchers will be teamed up as collaborative partners. Over the first few months, we build community through monthly Zoom cohort sessions. These run about 2 hours on weekday, afternoon, or evenings, depending upon your time zone. Then teams continue to meet monthly to collaborate. Our professional development focuses on using an integrated approach to science communication in the polar regions, explores key principles of STEAM, and examines strategies and frameworks for art integration. As teams continue developing their educational resources, educators will have check-ins and opportunities for feedback. Ultimately, each team will present their created resources during a virtual sharing session. We have two types of collaborations, virtual and field. I'll start by talking about virtual. In addition to the cohort sessions, virtual teams will meet monthly and have flexibility to plan their collaboration around their schedules. We estimate educators will spend roughly 4 to 8 hours per month on Polar STEAM between cohort meetings, monthly collaborative team meetings, and resource creation. Collaborators will learn and work closely, allowing educators to bring new polar science to their learners and help expand the engagement for the researcher's work. It may also be possible for the researcher to interact with the learners via Zoom. The virtual program allows for new partnerships with teams that have a more punctuated field schedule or don't spend time in the field, but are still investigating interesting polar-focused questions. And since Antarctic deployments continue to be limited, virtual collaborations have allowed more educators to engage with Antarctic researchers. In addition to the stipend, educators can also apply for funding to present their work at a professional conference and may be able to visit their researcher's lab as part of their collaborative work. Pictured here is educator Lori Orth, who teamed up with physicist Amy Lowitz to create music and lessons that help students understand the South Pole telescope. Since Amy was not able to bring an educator to the South Pole, through this virtual collaboration, she's able to expand engagement with her work. Lori was able to visit a similar telescope in Tucson, Amy's home telescope, with a trip funded by Polar STEAM, making the science feel personal and exciting for her students and providing Lori with more insight into Amy's work. In field-based collaborations, teams will initially interact virtually to build community and prepare for field deployments. We estimate the non-field time commitment to be the same as the virtual educators, roughly 4 to 8 hours per month. When in the field, educators are fully immersed and working as a member of the field research team, preparing gear, collecting data, and problem-solving issues that arise. This often means working 10 to 12-hour days in variable conditions with little to no personal time or space. Arctic deployments are shorter and usually in the summer, while Antarctic deployments are much longer and during the school year. Many educators are finding it difficult to gain support for longer absences during the school year. On the application, you will indicate your region of interest and your preference for virtual or field collaborations, or indicate that you are open to both. Living conditions in the field vary from shared dorm-like rooms or berths on a ship to tent camping in remote locations. You will also indicate what sort of working and living environments are comfortable for you. In addition to the stipend, we cover travel, food, outdoor wear, and funding towards substitute costs. Our FAQ page provides a more detailed breakdown of the covered costs. Now I'll share a little bit about our current cohort. Here you can see an overview of our 2025-26 cohort. This slide gives you an idea of how many educators, researchers, and artists can participate each year. The blue shapes break down the participants by category, and educators are further broken down into three educator groups. In orange, we've mapped our teams by collaboration type and location. These are our current virtual teams. We just met with our virtual educators the other night, and they were bubbling over with excitement about their collaborations and the resources that they're working on with their researchers. In this group, we have researchers who are investigating leopard seal populations, whales, phytoplankton community composition in the southern and phytoplankton community composition in the Southern Ocean, as well as Arctic-focused researchers modeling microbial communities, looking at the role of ice nucleating particles and their feedback on clouds, and using sediment cores to examine primary producers in Greenland lakes. Some really interesting research. We have 9 teams that will head into the Arctic in 2025. One team has actually already gone. They were out in April on the sea ice, and the rest are sprinkled throughout June, July, and August. These educators will spend 1 to 4 weeks working as part of the research team. Here are the locations where they'll be working. You can see we have land-based teams throughout Alaska and Greenland. We have one in Greenland. We have two Arctic ship-based teams, one in Southeast Alaska and one in Southeast Greenland. You can learn more about all of these projects on our website. The field locations are dictated by the work sites of the collaborating researchers, which changes every year. We anticipate the majority of the field collaborations for 2026 will again be in the Arctic. And finally, our Antarctic teams. We have two ship-based expeditions that will be working around the Antarctic Peninsula. Each of these has an educator and an artist working with a researcher. And our first land-based Antarctic fellow is a musician and performing artist who will be working with a team searching for meteorites. Educators are expected to help share the science that they are engaging with through various mediums. We use social media and curated blog posts, and also look to the creative ideas from our educators to enhance this sharing. I'll provide a few examples from last summer. From left to right, Jeanette Perlow created two informative blog posts while exploring the connection between her collaborators' fish research and native ways of knowing. Fatima Kamal created a planetarium show on Arctic data collection to share with her learners and the general public at her science center. And Holly Grant captured her experience and shared the research by vlogging her way through the Arctic. Depending upon your location and internet connection, it may be possible for educators to connect virtually with their learners and the general public. Coming up next week, we have another Cool Connections live stream from Prudhoe Bay. Julia and Taylor will be working in the field with Julia's team. They will zoom in from their field site to share their work on saltwater intrusion on Arctic coastlines. You will find additional information about this event posted on our events page. Please join us. I'm pleased to let you know that our resource hub is live on our website. We've posted several of our educator resources and we'll be adding more in the coming months. Now I'll highlight a few examples. Janice, a community college art educator, worked virtually to learn more about the work of her collaborators, Peter, Mary, and Alexi. Janice created the storyline about their work examining ecosystem change in northern Norway, while her students created the visuals to bring the story to life in a comic book style. This project ignited excitement for polar environments for a group of students in Southern California, and new groups of students are now working with Janice to animate this comic. This same team was able to take an educator to the field with them last summer. Matt, a middle school educator in Anchorage, Alaska, created a lesson that uses Scratch programming language to create an ecosystem simulator that models the population dynamics studied by his team. Learners were able to model the ecosystem and then make modifications to understand outcomes of changing the variables. This lesson will be on the Resource Hub soon. Megan, a program director for a garden and nutrition nonprofit, worked with her collaborators, Mike and Yoko, who study food life history and food security in remote Alaskan villages. She created several activities, including the one pictured here, that is based on her collaborators' research into underground food storage and her time spent working with them in Anaktuvik Pass. And lastly, Erica Duras, a high school science teacher, worked virtually with researcher TJ Fudge, who studies past climates by examining ice cores. She was able to join TJ and his team to process ice cores at the NSF Ice Core facility in Denver. Together, in Denver. She created a lesson that incorporates the sounds of melting ice to captivate students as they analyze and interpret real data to identify annual layers in the ice cores. These examples tie art, science, and education together in a fun and engaging way that helps tell the story of the researcher's work in a more accessible way. This is an overview of our annual recruitment and selection cycle. Applications are due August 8th by 5 p.m. Pacific time and must be submitted through our online portal. We strongly encourage you to submit your application well in advance of the deadline in case you encounter technical difficulties, as we are unable to accept late applications. Applications are first examined by a review panel. Next, a selection of educators will be invited to interview via Zoom to share more about their work. Then the team works to identify potential matches between educators' skills, interests, and availability, and researchers' needs and goals. In November and December, semifinalists will be notified and invited to meet with one or more research teams through facilitated matching meetings. We anticipated making our final matches in December and January, and the cohort work begins in February. We will match up to 10 virtual and 12 field-based educators. As you are considering applying for the Polar STEAM Educator Program, we encourage you to take time to create a detailed and thoughtful application. Help us see into your teaching world and how you will share the science. There is a Word doc provided on the Apply Now page, which can be a helpful way to prepare your answers. You can also save your application as a draft as you're working, but just don't forget to push submit. If you're interested in a field-based collaboration, pay special attention to the collaboration interest section. This is on page 5. Here we provide some introductory text to help frame the selection, this section. We encourage you to think carefully about answers to questions around region, comfort level, and time in the field. If you are interested in an Antarctic field-based collaboration, you should find out if your administration will support you to be away for 6 to 8 weeks during the school year. Flexibility is critical. We don't have exact research dates until much closer to departure, and even then, slight changes are possible. For example, we might know that a researcher is going to the field for 2 weeks in early to mid-June, but we won't know the actual field dates until 1 to 2 months prior. There is also a section on the application to indicate the dates that you are unavailable. We are now recruiting researchers throughout the summer, so we don't know what the research topics or locations will be at this time. But we do expect that most of the field placements will be in the Arctic, with limited spots in Antarctica. Virtual collaborations are likely to be from both locations. If you haven't already, please join our email list and follow us on social media to keep updated. We'll have several educators sharing from the field this summer, so it should be fun to follow along. Please also take time to read the FAQs before you submit your application. And that's all I have for now. So I'm going to stop my screen share so that we can take some questions.
Thanks so much, Melissa. That was a great overview. We did have some questions come in. We'll start with one that was posted ahead of time. This educator is interested in the field collaboration and wants to know if they need to have prior experience with field work to participate.
That's a great question. No experience is needed. On the application, you'll tell us, what your comfort levels are in different conditions. There's a lot of questions about this to really make sure that we're not going to place an educator in, camping in a remote location when they don't want to do that. That helps us to figure out matches, and you don't need to have experience to participate.
And then for someone that maybe doesn't have a lot of field work experience, can you describe what a day in the field looks like for an educator that is going to be engaging with a science team?
Sure. Yeah, it'll look a little different depending upon what sort of research you're doing, but generally, You know, some teams like early morning, some teams maybe a little bit later because they had later afternoons in the field. But having breakfast, getting a day pack packed up, maybe you're taking a truck or you're hiking out to your site. You might be sloshing in your waders through lots of wet ground, but probably walking across and through tundra, which is quite challenging. It's very different walking than most of us are used to when we're walking on a trail. But getting out to that field site, spending multiple hours out there, maybe there's multiple sites you're visiting in a day, taking data. Sometimes it's a pretty repetitive process. For example, taking thaw depth. You might be doing that measurement again and again and recording that. But it's exciting because you know that you're collecting data to kind of work towards that end goal. Ultimately, if it's a long day, it might be 10 or 12 hours out in the field out working, or you may come back in and have some lab work to do as well. And then, usually dinner with the team, and then early to bed. Jamie, will you share a little bit about like what it might look like on a ship?
Sure. Yeah. I used to be an oceanographer, so I've spent a lot of time out at sea, and it's pretty similar in that it's pretty long days. Researchers are trying to get as much science data collected in their limited time in the field as possible. So most of the time you're waking up to start oftentimes a 12-hour shift. And they can be odd hours. So sometimes on ships, you're doing 3 a.m. to 3 p.m. or 7 to 7 or noon to midnight, something like that. You'll pack up your things for the day so that you're not interrupting your bunk mate that's sharing the room and maybe needing that space when you're not in there working on an opposite shift. But yeah, oftentimes it's really, really like exciting, trying to race the ship to the next station where you're sampling, and the sampling can vary. Sometimes there's a lot of wait time while something's in the water. Sometimes things are very quick back and forth. And then there are meal breaks that revolve around the ship's meal schedule. And then after your time is done on that shift, you can kind of try to relax, go to the bridge where they're operating the ship's driving and hang out and do a lot of bird watching and whale watching. Yeah, it's kind of like a summer camp, but for science. It's very exciting times.
Nice. Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah. Let's see. We've got a question that just came in about what about does everyone have to be a science educator? Can they study things like economics or teach things like economics? Maybe.
Yeah, great. Yeah. So you do not need to be a science educator, but you do have to be able to demonstrate that you can use the polar science in your classroom with your learners, and create curriculum with that. So, but we've had art educators, let's see, math teachers, science teachers, of course, social studies, yeah, we've had a lot of different types of educators and informal educators in our cohorts.
And I know you mentioned this in the live stream, but just one more time, is there an age limit or perhaps is there a limit on years of experience?
Mm. Yeah, so you do have to be 21 years of age. Um, and then experience, no. There's not a limit on, how much experience you have to have. And like we said, you don't need to have experience actually working or being in the field, or collaborating. We're actually really looking for a range of educators with a range of experience. And, our current cohort is a great example of that with folks from, all different ranges of experience and, amount of time in the classroom and so forth.
Let's see. Oh, there's another question about just requirements to participate. What about someone teaching elementary school, like fourth or fifth grade?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm sorry to say to the elementary school teachers, and we get this question a lot, that it's not in our cooperative agreement. So NSF specifically in their agreement has 6th through 12th grade. So we cannot include elementary school teachers at this time.
Thinking about preparing an application, since we don't know what researchers and subject matters are available for collaboration at this time, do you have any tips with the application on how an educator can provide an application with that unknown in mind?
Yeah, so we don't ask you to identify specifically what types of area of research you're interested in, although we welcome you to share that with us through the question that's really asking about how you would incorporate this information with your learners. So depending upon your subject area, you might have some ideas of how what ways you would use to engage your learners, how you would bring all the science back. And so that's what we're really interested in, is how you would use it with your learners.
And then continuing on through that application process and selection process, how are educators matched with a researcher? Can you
Yeah,
describe more?
yeah. So I mentioned the matching meetings. So essentially, after we've interviewed folks, the team will work together to identify potential matches between the researchers that we have participating and the educators. Um, and those matches are looking at interests, comfort levels, skills, um, and where we think there might be a natural connection. And I'll just use an example of Megan, the educator I spoke about, who is the food and nutrition educator. She was just a perfect fit with our group that was studying food life history. And it was just we couldn't believe how well, that matched together. So sometimes there's that amazing fit. Sometimes, it's not quite that easy. um, but I will say each researcher or research group, sometimes there's more than one researcher participating, will meet with a few different educators. And educators who are selected to be semifinalists and get to go to matching meetings, they may meet with more than one group. So there's after those meetings, we get confidential feedback from both the researchers and the educators. And that helps kind of inform us how people are thinking about that potential match.
Great. Um, so moving along with the program now, what are some post-trip expectations of the program? Is there continued engagement, social media, blogging, presentations expected?
Yes, all of the above. um, so sometimes educators can actually do some of that from the field if they have internet connection. Others do not. And so, yes, we use social media. So we'll ask folks to put together some social media posts. Um, we do require field educators to write at least one blog. And it's a much more curated blog. It's not like blogging every day situation, but we have several educators who've written more than one blog. And then we'll also have those educators write blogs later on as they're using that research in the researchers' work in their classroom, talking about that. Um, we also had two educators. We did videos. You can see them on our YouTube channel that provided us a lot of material to actually provide videos for Earth Science Week. And so we like to really figure out how we can engage educators in continued events like potentially presenting at a conference like AGU or American Geosciences Union or something like that, or a teachers conference. So yes, lots of engagement. And we hope that, the 1 year, you have a 1 year period, which is sort of the supported period, but we hope that researchers and educators will continue to collaborate beyond that time. And it's pretty exciting to report that many of them are doing that. I love getting the highlights and the updates from folks as they're continuing to work together.
And thinking about that post experience, when the program is complete, is this an opportunity for professional development? Can an educator get continuing education credits?
Great question. So, yes, there is professional development. I mean, the entire experience is professional development. And specifically in the cohort educators, I mentioned that we have specific professional development around STEAM, art integration, and polar literacy. We do provide a certificate of completion, including contact hours, once you complete all the requirements. And educators who are seeking CEU credits or certification for continuing education probably will need to check with their particular state and see what they require. We're happy to help and assist in additional documentation if it's needed. But we found that it's like individual state and school district by district as to what they require, and we'll try to help provide you that.
Great. Let's see. Will educators have an opportunity to collaborate with the artists instead of just with researchers in the group?
Yeah, so the artists are part of the overall cohort, so there will be interaction during the cohort sessions and with the artists. Also, we sometimes have art educators in our educator group. And then some of the Antarctic educators may be placed in a team with educators. With artists. And so like our 2 Antarctic ship expeditions this year both have an artist and an educator. Otherwise, I would say the majority of the educator teams are specifically an educator and a researcher who are paired together.
Here's a question that came in. Would you consider a team of educators to apply? For example, science teacher and an art educator?
That's a great question. Unfortunately, we can only take individuals, and this is the same. We get this question a lot with the artists program as well. Each deployment slot is just for an individual educator or an individual artist. I encourage you both to apply and maybe possibly, and potentially collaborate. We often actually have an educator who has like there might be a educator researcher and then an additional collaborator who's working with them. We have a native teacher who was working with a group of our educator and researcher and a native educator, which was really neat. So there are additional people that are added to that collaboration kind of once they're back.
Yeah, but when someone's applying, just that aspect.
Individual, yeah, just individual applications. Correct. Thank you.
If someone participated and was selected for a virtual collaboration 1 year, could they go to the field in a different year?
Yeah, so one of the goals of our program is to expand participation in polar science. So it's unlikely that we would have repeat participants. So I would say no to that. If you're participating in our program, it's sort of a one-time opportunity, but then hopefully that collaboration will continue.
This is a pretty common question too. Do you need to be a classroom teacher to apply?
You do not. Informal educators are also eligible. In fact, we have many of them in our current cohort. But you do need a clearly defined set of learners and need to be able to integrate polar science with them. So if you are someone who's just teaching, maybe a class here or a class there, um, in the community, that's not going to reach the bar.
All right, we are starting to wind down on questions. If anyone that's watching live wants to post a question in the chat, we still have time to take a few. And while we're waiting for anyone to come in through the chat, another question that often comes up, how many applications do you receive in a year?
Yeah, it's pretty competitive. Somewhere between 100 and 150 applications are very common. We never really know year to year, but keep in mind though, we are looking for a broad range of educator types, experiences, and learners served. So, it's not just like if you feel like maybe I don't have enough experience, I'm not really sure. We'd encourage you to apply.
And then this is a bit more specific. Someone who's a social studies educator was wondering if there's some great social studies connections to polar STEAM teachers. If you can highlight any examples of more of a non-science connection, non-science educator being involved in the program.
Yeah, I think again the one that comes to my mind is our food and nutrition educator Megan, who made these multiple different activities for her students. She was in Anaktuvik Pass looking at food life history and food security with a group of social science researchers. We're doing a lot of interviews and evaluating. They have a bunch of sensors set up on a couple sites to look at these cellars that most of them have flooded and then frozen. And so they're no longer usable. And so they were sort of working with the elders to try and establish a new site and monitoring and using the data to figure out where that site might be to create a new cellar for the community. I would say also you can take a look at the resource hub to see some other examples that have been created.
Wonderful. That's about it for questions. One more came in asking if, family could join, but again, we accept a single person per application, and that would exclude family as well. Yeah, and that's about all of the questions that have come through. We've answered everything that's come through at this point. This session is being recorded. That was a recent one that just came in. Melissa, do you have anything else to add?
I think just, we look forward to seeing your applications and your creative ideas for how to share the science with learners and your community. Yeah, reach out if you have other questions. And please do use the resources on the website to help you in creating your application and, getting a little more information about the program. Thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time and I hope you have a great summer. Bye-bye.